Welcome to another episode of the Be Life podcast, and I'm Joe Palmisano, your host, and I'm joined today, I am honored, by the way, to be joined by Dr. Garte. He's an author, a teacher, a scientist, and a Christian. Dr. Garte is a biochemist, doctor of biochemistry, and has been a professor at New York University, University of Pittsburgh, Rutgers University. He has authored over 200 scientific publications, 4 previous books, and he's served on the National Institute of Health, vice president of research at the Uniformed Services University. Dr. Garte, he's authored many books. The most recent is a fascinating book. I just told him I was an English major. I do not have a scientific background. And his most recent book, called Beyond Evolution, How New Discoveries in Science of Life Point to God, is a book that I absolutely am immersed in and understanding and love. And Dr. Garte, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with me and to be with our listeners today and watchers.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I wanted to start out by letting people know who you are and the journey that you have taken in your life to get to the point where you're writing books like what you just did and what you have done before. And I believe you were a third-generation atheist, growing up with no thought of God, let alone one that you could have a relationship with. Can you explain a little bit about that and how it shaped your perspective of religion as a whole, and let alone Christianity?
Sure, and I do talk about this in my first book, which is called The Works of His Hands, my first Christian book, a scientist's journey from atheism to faith. Mm-hmm. And that talks about that journey, which was long.
Yeah.
As you said, going back 3 generations, my family was not only strongly atheist, but they were also Marxists. My parents were members of the American Communist Party in the 30s. And of course, atheism is part of that ideology. So I grew up with absolutely no religious ideas whatsoever. We exchanged presents on New Year's Day rather than Christmas. Because that's what they did in the Soviet Union. They at that time, they exchanged presents on New Year's Day. So that was my background. Now, it's interesting because recently some atheists have said I was never an atheist, which of course is insane. But I think I know what they mean by that. Most of them had been Christians and then decided to deconvert. But I didn't do that. I never went through that process. I was always an atheist. And that meant I didn't argue against religion. I just didn't think about it. I just knew it was all nonsense and stupid and untrue and even evil. Christianity was considered to be an evil thing by the Marxists. I mean, there's a long history of that. So that's how I grew up. And, I'm a boomer. So, I lived through the 60s, and I got exposed, as did everyone, to some of the kind of way out ideas of that time, including, New Age stuff, some content with spirituality in it, which I had no background in at all. And I was interested a little bit in that, but I didn't think any of it was real. And then I started studying science. My father was a chemist, and I went into chemistry in college and then biochemistry in grad school. And I would say the first intellectual shock that I had was learning about the details of how life works. Just to be very specific, and that this is discussed a great deal in the book you mentioned, Beyond Evolution. the way that cells make all the correct proteins in the right way using the genetic code and some incredibly complicated and complex and very beautiful machinery, biochemical machinery. When I learned about that, I mean, it was stunning. And I felt chills up and down my spine. I didn't know why.
Hmm.
And the first thing that occurred to me is, how did this happen? I mean, and then of course the answer was evolution. So, okay, fine. But that was a wake up call in a way. And I'd had a similar wake up call, but I didn't recognize it right away when I was still in college studying physics. I had a little bit of physics because as a chemistry major, you have to understand some physics. And I learned about the quantum mechanical theories, and they were crazy. I mean, they are crazy. Everybody agrees. They're not rational. They don't make a lot of sense. Turns out all of reality is based on probability, and there's an observer effect, and there's all kinds of stuff. The uncertainty principle, which doesn't fit with the pure materialism, pure determinism that I had learned, from my parents. And I found out later that, of course, everybody agrees, but it's crazy, but it's real. It's true. It's been proven beyond doubt. So that was a little bit of a shock, but the biology, the detailed biochemistry was even a greater shock. So my mind began to be a little bit questioning whether everything I thought I knew was true was really true, and I wasn't sure where to go. But then, and I don't think we have time to talk about this, I had personal experiences, and they're, as I said, detailed in the first book, The Works of His Hands. I had a couple of dreams that I didn't understand. And, well, one in particular that I didn't understand at all, but I couldn't forget it because it was very intense. And then I had another one a little later. And those are two of several that I had. But those two were really pushing me in a direction.
How do you explain those dreams, Dr. Garte?
Well, now I know exactly where they came from. One was they were both from the Holy Spirit.
Wow.
And what I realized later, once I came to Christ, was that God was pursuing me my whole life. I mean, I had incidents. Sometimes it was a movie that I saw that a girl who I was going out with, I didn't even know was Christian, but she was, and she brought me to see a movie called The Gospel According to St. Matthew, and it really rocked me. I was 16,
Hmm.
and I was absolutely an atheist, but for 10 minutes there was a scene in this movie of the resurrection where I said, "Oh my God, this is amazing! This is so beautiful! This is amazing!" And then I said, no, it's a trick of the movie. It's emotional. Forget it. No, it's not real. But it was real. I now know it was real.
Yeah.
So I had those, and then later, so meanwhile, back going into my scientific career, I kind of forgot all of that, except for these dreams, which were very troubling to me. I didn't know what they meant. And then something happened. I was brought to a church by a friend. I'd never been, I was in my 40s now, and I had never been in any house of worship in my whole life. And I was terrified. I mean, church, oh my God. I'd heard horrible things. Are they going to stone me? Are they going to, what are they going to do to me? And it was wonderful. It was, the pastor gave a sermon about love. And I didn't know love had anything to do with Christianity. I had no idea. And people were very friendly. I shook hands with everybody, wished them the peace of Christ. That was nice. I didn't know what that meant, but it felt good. So I left that church, and I thought, I said to my friend, maybe I'll go again. It was interesting. But, I wasn't anywhere near faith, but I even decided I would crack open that book I keep hearing about, which I'd never looked into. And I opened it up to the book of Matthew. And I read it. And it was hard going at first, but then I said, this interesting. This Jesus guy, he said some nice things. Blessed are the peacemakers. I mean, I can get behind that. And then I skipped ahead to the Book of Acts. I don't know why I did all this, but that's what I went to next. And I read the Book of Acts, and my favorite subject in school besides science was history, and I'm still a history buff. I read history for fun. I read the Book of Acts, and I said to myself, "This is not made up. This is history. This reads like a history text. This is not somebody making a story."
Which it
And that
was.
really shook, yeah,
Yeah.
and that really shook me up. I mean that, but I couldn't get there. I spent many years thinking, God, maybe God, I don't know, but Jesus, I don't know. I couldn't get there. Um, I kind of wanted to believe. I spent several
Mhm.
years at that stage, and I know other people who've gone through that. They there's a pull, but you just
I, for
can't.
one, have gone through that.
Yeah, okay. So
Yes.
yeah, and especially given my background, it was so foreign to me. And one of the things I
Mm.
thought was, well, if this were true, that's too good to be true. The world is a horrible place. It's dark, it's cold. You live, you suffer, you die. That was what I was brought up to believe. And then I had a experience. Again, this is detailed in the book, um, where I was driving and I had the radio on. I heard a preacher, and I turned it off, and I thought to myself, "Gee, what I like to talk, as you can tell. So, what would I say if I were giving a sermon?" Which was pretty funny. It's me giving a sermon. Next thing I know, I had to pull the car over. I was driving alone, and I don't know whether this was a vision. I don't know how to describe it, but I was giving a sermon outside to a group of people,
Wow.
and I don't remember the whole sermon, but it's in the book. But the end of the sermon was, and the point of it was, I said to this crowd, "I know that God loves all of you because He loves me, and if He loves even me, there's no one He couldn't love."
Wow.
That didn't come from me.
And no, that's deep.
That didn't come from me. And when I finished saying that, I opened my eyes, started bawling, and I said, "I believe," out loud. And the world changed. I mean, I know what born again means because I was born again. And
Mm.
a huge weight of sorrow, anger, fear, everything negative just fell out of my body, fell out of my mind. And that was it. And I was a Christian.
Wow. You know, I was thinking of the Greek philosopher Epicurus said, "I would be happy if I was absolutely sure death was the end." Uh, and and I'm thinking of you as an atheist, and even like the Wesleyan tradition. John Wesley believed in, or believes his, in prevenient grace, the
Right.
grace that chases you
Right.
and comes after you. You're kind of living proof of that prevenient grace in a life.
I think so. And by the way, by chance, I am now in the Methodist Church. So I understand that
Okay,
concept.
absolutely, absolutely. I wanted you. You said as you were going through this, another thing that came up. I remember you saying science didn't jibe with your materialistic worldview, and
Correct.
so as you were looking at all these things, you were saying this does not fit.
Right.
And there has to be something more behind the curtain.
Exactly.
That was part of your journey, also, correct?
Yes, definitely. And that was the beginning of it. That I think that realization, which came from the truth of science, which is nothing like what it used to be portrayed in the 19th century and even after, which is that science is just, you just do experiments, you get the truth, you get facts, you make a theory, you get a law. That's it. You're done. And that's not science at all. I mean, science is never finished. We're always finding out more things and learning new
Interesting.
things. And
Yeah.
science is not deterministic. It's not materialistic. And that opened me up to the possibility, I think. It opened me up it opened my mind and my soul up to receiving what I later received. It took a long time, but
Hmm.
eventually it came. And I think that's an important part of my message when I write about science and faith, and hope that some atheists will read that and see, well, maybe I should think about this a little more and not just say, well, I'm for science and I'm not for faith.
Yes.
That's nonsense.
Yes. Or the opposite is a very religious person would say, I'm for faith
Right.
and there is no science. You
Yes.
know, I'm not
Exactly.
going to even consider science.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
I,
I mean, this, what you're saying is exactly right. And that's kind of the reason, that's kind of the purpose of my life now, is to destroy that myth that science and
yes.
faith are separate.
I have to ask you, as you were going through this, did you ever think, I'm losing my mind? I'm, something is happening here and I can't allow it to happen because what will my family think and what will my peers think if I go through with this? And did that put pressure on you or no?
Not much, because it was all very private at first.
Okay.
Even after that time in the car when I said I believe, and I really felt I was a Christian. I went back, I read the whole New Testament and the rest of the Bible. I went to churches a few times, but I didn't tell anybody. I didn't.
Hmm.
I didn't. First of all, I didn't know. I believed the myth that it was science or faith. You can't have both.
Sure.
And I didn't. None of my colleagues were Christians. I thought. Turns out I was wrong, but they were being quiet about it also.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So
So,
I wasn't really thinking about that much. My family, my parents had passed by then.
okay.
Well, actually, yeah, around that time, my father died and my mother had died early.
Hmm.
So I didn't, never had to talk to them about it. In terms of friends, yeah, I did. I was pretty quiet because I didn't know
Hmm.
any other Christians except this one person who brought me to church that one time, and I didn't know any others.
They all know now.
Oh, everybody knows now.
I know.
Yeah.
I was thinking when I was reading your book and when I was researching you and all this, a lot of it came. I didn't become a Christian, actually give my life to the Lord until I was 60 years old. So I was
Oh,
actually even older than you when I did, and I was stubborn. I remember all the things of the 60s and 70s. I'm a baby boomer also. I'm 72
mhm.
years old. So
Okay.
I remember the transcendental meditation boom.
Oh
I
yeah,
went through
I
I
did
went
that.
through that. I actually went through, I don't know if you remember EST, uh,
Yes, I
Werner
do.
Erhard,
Yes,
and
yes, I
and
remember that. I didn't do it, but it was very
I did
popular.
it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I was at the time when God was reaching in the prevenient grace that you and I are talking about, Dr. Gart. I was substituting the real Christianity in a relationship with God with all the things that society
Right.
said, try this first,
Right. Right.
see if this will suffice, and you'll fit in with everybody else. Because at the time of Est,
Everybody was doing
millions were going to it every weekend,
it.
and so I did it all. I did the Est, I did the TM, I did the whole thing, and so I get
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Oh, how about biofeedback? I did that. Did you do
I
that
did
too?
not do that. I was tempted. I think Est was kind of a little bit like that, but I get it.
A little, yeah. Not. It was kind of weird though. But
It was
yeah,
just it was just a great scam. It was a
yeah.
great scam,
Oh, yeah, it
by the
was.
way. Brilliant. I told you that and I said at the beginning, I'm not a scientist. I was an English major. I steered away from most sciences as best I could, and math and everything else. But your book, Beyond Evolution, is a fascinating read, and I kind of understand what your goal was in writing the book, but I don't want to misstate it. But so I'd like you to explain what your goal was in writing Beyond Evolution.
Sure. It's really two things which are not completely separate, but they're related. But I usually talk about them in two ways. The first part of the book, first two chapters, and maybe first two and a half chapters, are about evolution and the what I consider the tragic reality that the church is really split on this issue, and it should not be. And that's the point I make. Not because I take one side or the other. I mean, I do think that evolution is real, but I think that both sides, and by the way, this is mirrored right now in politics. We see the same thing. Both sides are taking extreme positions. So one group is saying evolution doesn't happen. It's not real. It's not true. Doesn't explain anything. The other side is saying evolution explains everything. It's all done. We're done. Everything in biology makes sense because of evolution. But they're both wrong. Evolution works and is real, and that's actually agreed to by Answers in Genesis. In the book, you may have seen, I have a figure which shows the phylogenetic tree, how animals developed. And I show the Answers in Genesis figure, which is almost identical to the mainstream science figure, except it starts later. It starts after the flood. But the whole idea of, mutations, natural selection, the whole general basic idea of evolution, everybody agrees is real. It's called microevolution by some people, but whatever. So why are we arguing about this? And I think the answer is because a lot of Christians who don't like evolution, and I've heard this from a professional colleague who's become my friend, who doesn't like evolution. He said, and many people agree, that the problem with evolution is it has no room for God in it. And so it's like a natural process can explain everything. Well, the fact is that's not true. Even scientifically, it's not true. And so one of my objectives is to show this in the book, to explain how evolution has changed. It's no longer, and a lot of people, a lot of non-scientists are not aware, on both sides, are not aware that evolution is not your grandmother's evolution or even your older brother. It's changed tremendously, and it now includes many, many things that point to God. And if we even leave evolution aside and look at biology as a whole, and this is the other motivation, there have been so many new discoveries, which if you hear them discussed, you think, oh, this person must be a fanatical Christian to say this stuff, but it's not. This is coming from mainstream science, and what I'm talking about is things like the following. All of life, including little bacteria, show strong evidence of agency. They do things on purpose. They have purpose. They do things for a reason. And they have cognition, which allows them to do that. And now when I say that, people say, what are you talking about? Bacteria can't think. Well, actually, bacteria can sense their environment through chemical signaling. And based on what they sense about their environment, they make decisions. And they can remember things.
Interesting.
It's fascinating. And where did all this come from? This didn't come from evolution because we see it at the very beginning of life. So where did it come from? Why is there purpose? You know, Richard Dawkins loves to say at bottom the universe has no purpose, no meaning, no good and evil. Nonsense. It's never been true because we are part of the universe and we have purpose and meaning and good and evil, but it's true for all of life. So in my view, scientifically, now I can't prove it because there's no evidence, but everything I know tells me that life is a creation of the divine. If it's not the God we know, if it's not Jesus Christ, which I believe it is, of course, but even if it's not, we can't explain it through the laws of chemistry and physics. We can't explain where agency came from. It doesn't exist in the natural world. It's correct. There's no purpose. When a volcano blows up, it just, responding to forces. It doesn't have a reason. It doesn't have a purpose. It doesn't decide to do it. It doesn't know what it's doing. And that's true for all of physics and all of chemistry. And it's not true for anything that's alive. And some of the discoveries that are being made now are just almost surreal. There's even, I always show this, there's even a book that was published by MIT Press called Evolution on Purpose. 5 years ago, that book would never have been considered by any publisher. And now it was published by MIT Press. And it's an amazing book. It has 18 chapters written by mainstream scientists. I don't think any of them are professing Christians. Edited by 6, again, world-famous mainstream scientists. And it has material in there that will blow your mind. And I talk about that in my book. And I have a review of it that was recently published. So the world of biology is changing. And it's showing so many what I call pointers to God. It's not evident, it's not proof, but it's evidence for the existence of God. It's a pointer to God, because I don't know what else could be doing all this.
Well, I think, and I was stuck in this as being a non-scientist, is I was stuck in evolution being one cell crawling out of a swamp, and all of a sudden that cell mutated, and some of them became humans, some of them became this, some of them, and Dr. Garte, I apologize for my ignorance on this, but that's where I was stuck.
Yeah.
And that's where many Christians, I think, are stuck. I won't put many people in that category as what I just described. But what you're talking about is evolution being a tool of the Creator.
Correct.
Where he created everything in their categories.
Right.
And then those categories each can go through evolving into more advanced.
Yeah.
Or still a selection of some
right.
disappear, some stay.
Yeah. And that brings up another point in my book, which occupies a chapter, which is that evolution, everybody is now thinking that evolution is the basic law of biology. Okay, it describes everything, especially the anti-theists believe that. They think that evolution you don't need anything else. It's just evolution. Not true. What I show in the book is that the basic underlying rule or law of biology is inheritance. Living organisms are the only thing in the universe that makes accurate replicas of itself. It self-replicates with high accuracy. Like now, in modern days, most organisms produce replicas that are 99.99% the same as themselves. That includes single cells, plants, animals, us. No living thing has ever given birth to a different species. That's a mistake about evolution. Because evolution does not occur in individuals. That's only Pokemon. Evolution only occurs in populations. So what you have, if you have a group of individuals and they're mostly white with a few black ones or a few dark ones, that population may change. Like if it's talking about moths during, the Industrial Revolution, that population will become darker because it's beneficial to be darker. But one individual moth never goes from white to black. Each white moth keeps giving birth to white moths. The problem is the white moths get eaten by the birds because they can be seen. So the population evolves and becomes darker. And the reason that's so fascinating to me, that it's this accurate inheritance that's the basis of evolution, is the basis of biology, the basis of life. Let's go to Genesis. What does Genesis say? It says God created life from the earth. Okay, fine. Doesn't say how, but okay, I agree. God created earth. But then it says a particular phrase 25 times in a few paragraphs, each according to its kind.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly correct. Every living organism gives rise to another one exactly according to its kind. So dolphins only give birth to dolphins. Eagles only give birth to eagles. Humans only give birth to human babies. No chimp ever became a human. In other words, each according to its kind is the biblical verse, which is, as I said, is repeated 25 times. So it's got to be important, right? I mean,
Yes.
I'm not a biblical scholar, but I know that when something comes up over and over again, God wants you to hear this.
Yeah. Now, I have to ask you, I grew up, when we grew up in the going to school in the 50s and 60s, and I still remember the little chart with the monkey going more upright and going through all the different stages. And even as a child, I was wondering, okay, when did this stop? If evolution were continuing,
Yeah,
we should see people on the street that are halfway between.
right.
But what science? How did it get to the point where those things were published in books and taught to kids? Who came up with this?
I don't know, but it's a terrible meme. It's completely wrong.
Are there scientists who still believe that, Dr. Garte?
There are people who believe that, but they're not scientists. They're not biologists.
Okay.
Either Christian or atheist. I mean, that everybody hates all biologists hate that meme.
Okay.
Because of what you said. It doesn't show what it's supposed to show. Most people look at that and say, "Oh, so that monkey became that monkey, and then that monkey became that monkey." No, that's not what happened.
How did we get the? When did the line? And I'm guessing this happened around the turn of the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
But when did the line get drawn in the sand between science and religion? Because I think before that, science and religion were compatible. They were in synergy.
Yes.
How did it change?
That's a great question. Yeah. So what happened was, I mean, the origins of science were all due to Christianity.
Yeah.
Now, there was science in the Islamic world, there was science in the ancient Greek world, but it wasn't the kind of science we know. It was mostly based on logic and some observations and stuff. But what happened in Europe, Christian Europe, was these philosophers began thinking, God is the creator and ruler of the universe, and he must use some natural means to do all this. There must be some lawfulness in the universe. And we know that a lot of things look lawful, but we don't know how they work. So what happened was they began studying this, and at first the only thing to study was Aristotle, which is all logic, and but logic is not really science. Logic can be used scientifically, but it's not a substitute for science.
Mm.
So what these philosophers did was they actually did measurements and experiments and observations, and they wrote it down. And eventually you had somebody like Newton who found out that gravity is not magical or mystical. It's everywhere. It's a force. And not only that, he could describe the force with a mathematical equation that was always true, which is astounding. And that spread to other areas of physics and astronomy and eventually to chemistry. And all of those innovators were Christians. Newton was a theist, but not a Christian, but all the others were Christians. That includes Galileo, Copernicus. Then with chemistry, we had Robert Boyle, who basically invented chemistry. So many people. I mean, I have lists of these. Louis Pasteur in biology.
Right.
All devout Christians. Michael Faraday, the inventor of electricity, he wrote more about Christian theology than he did about science.
Interesting.
And so, yes, you're right. Science was a Christian endeavor, and it was extremely successful in showing that the world is a rational place ruled by a rational God who gave us the laws of nature, the laws of physics, the laws of chemistry. What happened, what changed that, and some of this might have been I don't know exactly, but some of it might have been a reaction to Darwin, who wrote in 1859, The Origin of Species. Now, Darwin was not really an atheist. He wasn't. He had been a Christian. He left Christianity, but not because of anything in science. He left it because of the tragic death of his daughter. He was devastated. But and Alfred Wallace, who also discovered evolution, was a devout Christian his whole life. But other people, there were some clergymen who began attacking the whole idea of evolution because they felt that it was leaving God out of the picture, and perhaps anti-biblical. And that created a reaction. And in fact, 2 books were written. I always forget the titles, but one of them was about a war between faith and science, and the other had something about the conflict thesis. And both of these books, one was written in the late 19th century and one was written in the early 20th century, they had a tremendous influence on the intellectual community. And people were already, very pro-science because science had done all these amazing things. We had all this great technology. And the idea that they promulgated, these 2 books promulgated, was that the church has always been anti-science, which is, of course, nonsense. And they promoted the myth of Galileo, which has since been debunked, and people began thinking, well, gee, science is better than this ancient superstition, called Christianity. And then World War I was a disaster. People began, got really upset at the tragedy of that. That was horrendous in history. That was the worst thing that had happened. Bertrand Russell, the philosopher, became a very outspoken atheist, and more came. And, the world didn't get any better. We had the Second World War, which turned out to be worse than the first. And soon enough, people were turning away from the church. And then we had the rise of New Atheism, which started in about 2004 or 5 with Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris. And they wrote books, and that influenced a whole generation of kids to leave. What has happened more recently, and is still in the process, is New Atheism is just about dead. The New Atheism approach was, it's not enough to say, I don't believe in God. You have to fight back against the Christians, well, actually all religions. You have to fight back, show that they're stupid and wrong and terrible and evil. And people were doing that. They had rallies, there were all kinds of things. But it turned out that if you really, and there is a book that was published called Coming to Faith Through Dawkins.
Oh, wow.
And that was published a few years ago. It's 12 chapters by former atheists who had come to Christ, not only despite of, but because of the new atheism. Because the new atheism was so wrong, historically wrong, logically wrong, scientifically wrong, that it turned a lot of people off. I have the first chapter in that book. And it was edited by two scientists, two Christians who were scientists, Dennis Alexander and Alistair McGrath. And they are both British. I know them both. They're British scientists. And they edited it. But the authors of the 12 chapters, we didn't know we didn't know each other. We didn't know who each other were. And it's a fascinating book. It's published by Kriegel, the same publisher who did my first two books. And, it gives the story of why New Atheism died. And there's another book by Justin Brierley, another British guy who you may have heard of. He has a great podcast on the surprising rebirth of faith. And he talks about how all of a sudden there's a revival going on. People are coming back to faith. Yes. A lot of the people who left. Yes. And a part of that is because of the excesses of what Dawkins and these other people were saying things that were crazy. Daniel Dennett said, there's no such thing as consciousness, it's an illusion. Okay. Why did he say that? Because he can't explain it. There's no explanation for consciousness, so just say it doesn't exist. Okay. That's not very scientific.
Yeah. I have been to Africa and China, and both are exploding for Christianity.
Yeah.
South America.
Iran.
Yes. It is. And I think we're seeing it again in the United States. I'm not sure about Europe right now. I still think Europe is kind of in the throes of humanism and everything else. But I think the United States is starting. I'm seeing it in young people, college age people.
Yeah,
we're seeing revivals going on, and it's interesting because I think also at the time of the turn of the century, of the 20th century, wasn't that the same time as Rousseau and Marx and some of the others that were espousing the independent humanistic kind of philosophies where anything goes, where we want to break the shackles of a God that tells us we can't do this and can't do that, and it's all about what you feel is good. And they were basically, in a couple of the cases, they were basically doing that to make excuses for their own bad behavior. So they came up with a theory that fit everybody to make themselves feel much better about what they were doing. But I find, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say I forgot about Marx, which is crazy because that was very important in my life. But Marx was clearly an atheist, and he had a lot of followers. And one of the things that happened at this period was the Russian Revolution, which was totally atheistic. It was Russia was a religious country before that. The church was very powerful, and wow, that got wiped out.
Yes.
So the communist revolution was an atheist one, as I know from personal experience. So all of these things together had a strong effect. You're right, and a lot of philosophers joined in. Rousseau, I think, was a little earlier, but you had Sartre, I think, was very strongly atheist.
Absolutely.
And so it was more than what I just said before. It was a lot of things all happening at once.
Yeah.
And atheism is not going to go away, but I think that the trends in as you said, in Africa, China, South America, and even the Middle East. I mean,
Yes.
North Africa. I mean, it's astounding, but it to me it makes perfect sense. I mean,
Yes.
I mean, I I have a absolutely 100% guaranteed belief that Christianity is true. And
Absolutely.
I also believe that truth prevails. Sometimes
Mm.
it takes a back seat for a while, whether it's science or faith or even political truth, but eventually it prevails. And
Yes.
I think that's God's will, and it happens. And since I believe Christianity is the truth, I think it's going to prevail.
Yeah. I think I have been studying Hebrews recently.
Mm,
And in Hebrews 13, you start getting in chapter 13, the writer of Hebrews starts getting into how we are to hold on to the truth of Christianity
right,
and not give in to the culture of the day.
right.
And I started thinking of how and it's perfect in this science because when you're talking about how Christianity fit, say, 50 years ago in science,
Hmm.
and had Christianity tried to adapt to the science of that day
Right,
to be up to date, it would
right.
now be out of date.
Correct. That's
And
a great
and
point, Joe.
and
I
we
just
keep holding as we keep holding on to the truth through all the cultural and scientific
that's right.
changes,
That's right.
the truth becomes more evident over time.
Exactly. And that's a great point. And what I often say is, okay, Jesus Christ was God incarnate, right? Good. Came to
Yes.
earth. He taught us a lot of things. What did he not teach us? Any science.
Yeah.
Why? Well, what science would he have taught? Would he have
Very
taught
good
what
point.
we now think is true today, 2025? Well, no, because that's not going to be true in 10 years.
Right.
Would he have taught, as what you just said, if he had taught the science of, I don't know, 1950, half of it would have been wrong. If he
Yes.
taught the science of, 1850, it would have all been wrong with a few exceptions. I mean, so you're right. That's why Jesus didn't tell us anything about science. That's for
Yes.
us. That's what we have to do. And the other thing you said that's absolutely correct is the more we learn, the closer we get together, science and faith. So,
Wow.
for example, the best example, of course, is that in the turn of the century, in the year 2000, all scientists knew that the universe was eternal. That was a fact. It never began. It's never going to end. It's always been here. It'll always be here. And then we got evidence that that's not true, right? The monk Lemaitre came up with this idea that maybe there was a beginning to the universe. And then people found evidence that that was true. And it was rejected because, quote, that's too much like Genesis.
Wow.
But guess what? It's true. The universe had a beginning. There's no
Yes.
there's no doubt now. The evidence is extremely clear. Now there are some atheists who say, "Well, no, there was something before." They're just making things up, believe me.
Right.
And okay, so all of a sudden we have science here and faith here, and all of a sudden they're a lot closer because they agree on something really critical. The universe
Mm.
had a beginning, and we have no idea scientifically what that could have been. Biblically, we know it was God. It was
Yeah.
created. And eventually, I think everyone will realize that that is the answer.
That's interesting because you kind of close with a strong hope in your book, and I haven't finished, but I skipped ahead because I cheated a little bit. I looked at the
That's
finish,
okay.
but but you end with kind of a strong hope in talking about a brilliant young scientist who will come along and publish the first paper that expands our knowledge of reality and points to the divine hand of our Creator. Now, when I read that, I thought, boy, he's very optimistic. But I also was thinking, I thought, do you really believe that we can ever get to a point in our humanity where we can plumb the depths of the ways of God? Or is it something that I think in my mind, I'd like to think maybe we can do that, but I believe that will have to wait until eternity.
I agree.
No, I mean, do you actually think somebody could do that, or was that kind of just a wish?
No, I think what somebody will do, and it's already happening in biology and it happened in physics, is that the science we're learning is pointing more and more to a divine creator as the best explanation. We can't prove it. We will never prove the existence of God, but that's because science never proves anything. There's a myth that a lot of people have that science proves something. No, it never proved anything. It's always a theory. It's always subject to revision and change, and that happens all the time in physics and chemistry and biology, geology. It's always changing because we learn new things. That's why Jesus couldn't tell us the truth of science, because we would never have understood it. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think we'll ever say, here it is. Now we know everything that God knows. No, because we're not God. And God is in a different category. God is divine. We're not. But we're going to be approaching that. It's the idea of the asymptote, which is a curve that goes up and gets closer and closer to the maximum, but never quite gets there. That's a mathematical reality. And that's what I think we're going to be. At some point, we're going to be so close that everyone will say, well, obviously God is real because all the evidence points there. But it's not going to be proof. And it's not going to be one single theory that proves God. It's going to be an important theory that explains, for example, something like the origin of life. But that explanation will point in some way or other to a divine presence. That's what I believe.
Is science? Science is the ability to try and recreate something, to prove something to a certain extent, right? I mean,
yeah.
And I guess I want to ask this, and I'm thinking of science and how it has to prove that there is. I mean, even Einstein, towards the end of his life, said, "Hey, look, something's got to be behind this."
Right.
I'm not going to say it's a God. I'm not going to call him God, but there's got to be some kind of intelligent design behind what I've studied.
Right.
And so science in itself can only be a science if what was created or what is around us that is factual is measurable.
Right.
If it were random, it just all of a sudden happened and everything is random and we could not measure anything. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're absolutely correct. And that's why you never got science from any polytheistic religion. And the reason is because if you believe that there's lots of gods around and they're all doing the things that they like to do on a whim, okay, so it rained today because some god, wanted to take a shower. I don't know, I'm making things up, but,
Yeah.
or somebody fell down because he didn't pray correctly to some god who said, okay, I'm going to make you fall down. And that's where many people used to believe all over the world. And there's no science there. You can't do any science because nothing is regular. You can't come up with an equation that explains anything because a God might say, I don't like that. I'm going to do something else because they have the power.
Yes.
But if you believe in one universal deity who is the creator and the manager of the whole universe, you can have miracles, but they're rare. And aside from the miracles, what you have is a regular, orderly, lawful universe that you can
Hmm.
study, as you said, with science, because you do the experiments, you always get the same result. Okay, this is a law, this is a theory, this
Right.
happened. And you can only
So
do that with a lawful universe. And
yes.
that's
So
why God created all.
How does Dawkins and Harris and all these people explain a universe that is that
Mm-hmm.
without a intelligent designer?
They don't, and all they say is, if we say what you just said, if we say uh, the universe is intelligible because it's created to be intelligible, they'll say, no, it just is. It just is. That's the atheist answer for why things happen. There is none. They only talk about how it happens. And
Hmm.
if you ask them why is mass able to convert to energy? Why does E equals mc squared? Why is that? Why is energy conserved? You never lose it, you never gain it. They'll say, it just is. That's how it is. We know it's true. That's how it is. Why? Oh, there's no why. They're not going to
Well,
answer that question.
that kind of sounds like Epicurus that we talked about, the Greek philosopher who said, I'd be happy if I knew for sure death was the end.
Yeah,
That's that's
it's
kind of
kind of
that whole theory.
it's kind of self-defeating, and it's depressing, and that's that the depressing part of this extreme atheism that we had, and we call the new atheism. That was a major motivation for many people to reject it. And once you
Hmm.
reject atheism, where do you go? you
Yes.
know, you have to go somewhere. You can go to any religion, but Christianity is the one to go to.
Yeah. And you go from one to another, one to another, and trying to
Yeah,
fill that void that
right.
is only filled with Christ. What's next for you? What's on? Do you try and plan ahead and figure out where you're going next? I mean, your goal obviously is to try and unite or bring science closer to Christianity, to kind of get rid of that line in the sand
Right, right.
and bring more people into this realism. And you're not the only one. There's
Oh
other
yeah,
scientists who are doing the same. And so
absolutely.
what's next for you as you go through this? Are you getting to the point where, okay, I'm stepping away, somebody else has got to handle it, or are you on fire still to keep doing this?
Well, that's a good question, and I asked myself that, and the answer is both. I, I'm still on fire, but I just turned 78, so I'm not,
Okay.
that's my boomer age. So, you
Yeah.
know, uh, I'm getting a little tired, I just began work on a new project, which is related to spreading the word of science to the world
Hmm.
through ministry students. It's a project. I'm going to be preparing a course in introduction to science for these students, and it's going to have a lot of the material I've talked about here, and other things I've talked about in my books. I don't know yet whether I'm going to be putting out another book for the public. That depends on many factors, which at this point I'm not clear on. I
Yeah.
do have some ideas, but writing a book is a lot of work.
Oh, I believe that. I believe
And
that.
I have a wonderful publisher. This book was published by Tyndale House, which is a
Hmm.
great publishing company, Christian publishing company. So, but we haven't discussed it yet. This book just came out 2 months ago. I guess
Yes.
it's 3 months now. So it's I'm doing this. I'm doing interviews. I'm doing publicity, all
Yeah.
this stuff. But yeah, we'll see. After in the new year, we'll see how things stand. But I'm definitely keeping busy. I'm the editor in chief of a small online magazine called God and Nature, which is put out by the American Scientific Affiliation. It's the oldest organization of Christians in the sciences.
Oh, wow.
And that magazine comes out. It's a quarterly online magazine, and
How do you get that?
well, members of the ASA, the American
Oh,
Scientific
okay.
Affiliation, get it for free, but you don't have to be a member. You can just subscribe to it. If you go online to God and Nature magazine, don't just write God and Nature because you'll get thousands of things. But God and Nature magazine, you can just subscribe, and
Awesome.
as I say, it's quarterly. And I also have a Substack, which I keep up with, called
I'm getting that
Faithful.
now.
You're getting that. Okay. So it's
Yes,
Faithful
yes.
Science, SYENCE, a little bit of a pun. And that's another outlet for my predilection for speaking.
Well,
And writing.
and the book Beyond Evolution, you could get that just about anywhere,
Oh,
right?
that's everywhere. Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah, I mean, I got it off
Amazon,
of Amazon. Yes,
anywhere you want. Yeah.
yeah, and I'll tell you what, at 78, your brain hasn't slowed down at all. You're awesome,
I wish.
and you also are that link between the 50s, 60s, and today,
Yeah.
which is very important for us to have you a part of that. Even those of us who are your peers, like myself, who are the same age, almost the same age,
Yeah.
still need that voice that we don't know about because we're not all scientists and things, and these
Right.
are all important
Right.
issues. So I hope you stay in it as long as you can, and because I don't know if a younger person can give us the depth of information that you have, and we're grateful for that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Joe. That's very
Dr. Garte, thank you so much for taking time to be with us. Again, Beyond Evolution, How New Discoveries in Science of Life Point to God. It's a very good read, and you'll find other books that he has written and many other things you could go to. I think you have your own site called...
Yeah, I have a website at sygart.com, which
Okay.
is
And it's
anything you ever wanted to know
SYSY.
about me. Yeah, SYGARTE.
Yes.
And .com, and that'll take you there, and it has links to all my books. It has everything. I mean, most stuff nobody cares about, but it does have my whole CV and my podcasts I've been on and all kinds of things. So that's the source.
Well, it was an honor speaking with you today, and it was great speaking with you. I've enjoyed this tremendously. I was looking forward to it, and it did not disappoint at all. So
well, thank you.
I'm hoping we can, somewhere in the future, we'll do this again. You come out with a new book or something, or even not, just to sit and talk again.
Sure.
I would love that.
Be happy
I
to.
hope you're okay with that.
I'd be happy. I'd be delighted.
I hope you enjoyed our visit with Dr. Sygart, his journey through from atheism to Christianity, and also the depth of his knowledge of evolution and science as a Ph.D. in biochemistry and also as a Christian. An interesting combination and how he puts it together and brings people together and is trying to eliminate the line in the sand between atheistic science and Christianity in who we are in our faith. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, take a moment to subscribe to us on YouTube, like us, hit that like button, follow us on all the other platforms that you may be listening or watching this on. And I hope that you will continue to tune in to the Be Life podcast as we bring you very interesting people and their real life journeys in Christianity. Have a great week to you. God bless, and we'll talk to you next time.